Hello, this is Chove, the Shiny Colors Discord. Welcome to another episode of the Shiny Review. Today we have 4 cards that we're going to talk about. A new Produce SSR for Hiori, Support SSR for Amana, Produce SR for Madoka, and Support SSR for Fuyuko. Now, there is technically a 5th card that's currently available, which is the Agenda 283 event Mono, but we talked about her in a previous video last year, which I'll link above. So, remember that Hiori and Amana are both limited, and Fuyuko is a special case because we can't technically buy her yet. We'll be getting Fest coins pretty soon. Her card cycles out not too long. Well, her card will cycle out eventually, so you'll want to make sure that you get at least a couple copies, which I highly recommend. Overall, the banner is very good, so let's see what exactly is going on with this banner specifically. Starting things off, we have Hiori. It hasn't been too long since Mono 6 started off the Illuminae set, but Hiori is already here to wrap things up. She's built pretty similarly to Mono, but she trades the AoE appeals for a little more single-target dance damage. She has memory gauge boosting, which is hugely appreciated, along with solid and interesting passives to build around. She will certainly be a terror in teams moving forward. An interesting point about Hiori's memory appeal is the fact that it's built similarly to Mono 6, but with less dance. The rationale, according to Takayama, is that Hiori is geared towards a rainbow-style Illuminae build, while Mono is more for dance-centric teams. Outside of this, she's a produced card with one of the biggest buffs in the game, a 350 to dance stats with uncaps at 3 stars, and has really good damage to boot. Her roles are center, attacker, and memory gauge boost, and I very highly recommend pulling for this Hiori, especially if you're an Illumination Stars producer or just want to experiment with a mostly dance card that has tri-stat capabilities. Hiori's initial skill is a Dance 3.5 appeal that follows up with a Vocal Visual 0.5 appeal and also raises your memory gauge by 15%. This links into a Dance 0.5 appeal. At max, she unlocks a Dance 5.0 appeal that follows up with a Vocal Visual 1.0 appeal and raises your memory gauge by 25%. The link is still the same at a Dance 1.5. Now here's the interesting part. Hiori's 1-star passive is pretty normal. A Dance 50% up that requires Hiori on your team, and it has a 30% chance to activate 3 times. Her 2-star passive is where things get a little complicated. It's a Dance 75% up that requires the turn count to be between turns 2 and 4. So it has to be turn 2, turn 3, or turn 4, as it applies the same greater than or equal to or less than and equal to clause that they've had in the past. So you have 3 turns to activate this passive at all. This has a 30% chance to activate twice, and she also gets a Dance plus 50 uncap at 2 stars. Her 3-star uncaps are plus 150 to dance and plus 50 to dance, and her 4-star passive is a Dance 120% up alongside a Vocal Visual 60% up that requires your star count to be between 2 and 8 stars total. This has a 40% chance to activate twice. Her memory appeal once maxed out is a Dance 1.8 appeal that links into a Vocal Dance Visual 2.0 appeal. For the support recommendations, we're going to be taking the exact same approach as we did for Mono, just replacing Hiori supports with Monos. Finding a mix of tri-stat and dance can lead to effective results, so mix and match depending on what types of buffs you need ideally. You could also opt to include Seagull Mono instead of Train, but you run into the issue of Mono not quite fitting what Hiori wants in stats that way. Train at least keeps consistent with dance and meshes well with many support setups. So you could choose to use Juri, or Mamimi, or a more defensive style Kiriko. You have other Meguru options as well, Asahi for SP generation for dance, a lot of good choices. For the team recommendations, continuing on the brand of Dance Illuminae, this setup more or less mirrors the Mono 6 build we talked about prior. Some builds have opted to bring in the new Mamimi for additional dance supports, and possibly Kogane 5 as well. This was actually a style of team inspired by Takayama's slide, going over the team build if you wanted a more dance-focused team. The rainbow iteration of this build focuses on Hiori as the center and includes cards like Kaho 5 for interest buffs, so you may choose to use Choco as well. You can obviously have Antika builds built around Yuika if you just want more dance damage, or if you want to complement, Antika and Hokura work very well with this team in general. Hiori as a center earns an S+ to a SS. Hiori may not have as much upfront damage as Mono 6, but she can make up for it with her Link appeal. Despite most of my praising of the particular supports that let it happen, Rainbow builds still quite aren't up to par with single stat builds. That being said, Hiori's passives help offset this innate weakness in a good way, so you shouldn't be too disappointed in Hiori as a center. As a unit, she earns pretty much the same marks, S+ to SS-. Realistically, the only actual downside of this Hiori is that she isn't AoE. If you didn't believe that Illumine were back in action before, Hiori should make you a believer. At 0 stars, she's a pretty normal card, but absolutely kicks into high gear the second you get a duplicate. Her 4-star passive is absolutely monstrous, even if the activation condition can feel restricted. It's a neat direction that in turn creates an incredibly powerful produce card. Next we have our support SSR, Amana. Another limited Amana support arrives, this time being a dance support that's so aggressively focused on generating SP that she very quickly becomes a great option for any dance team. She brings back the level 45 mastery with her stamina support, has 4 separate sources of SP generation, and packs a ton of damage in her passives and appeal. Her event passive is also interesting, but has pretty low odds of activating despite the mundane nature of it. But all in all, Amana is a phenomenal card. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, Rest Boost, and Stamina support, and she has 4 unique support skills. The first is Unit Mastery SP, reaching +8 at level 80. Then she has Dance Mastery SP, reaching +10 at level 75, alongside Radio Mastery SP and Talk Mastery SP, also reaching +10 at level 75 each. Her support appeal does scale, staying as a Dance 3.0 from level 1 to level 80, however, starting at level 60, it applies a 5% dance buff for 5 turns, which increases by 5% every 5 levels. This means at max, it's a 25% dance buff for 5 turns. Her TFD idea is vocal, her insight token for grad is visual, and her proficiency in landing point is in visual. Amana's 1-star passive is a dance 35% up and mental 5% heal that requires the turn count to be 4 or earlier. This has a 20% chance to activate twice. Her 2-star passive is a dance 85% up that requires your mental to both be over 75% and the turn count must be before turn 3. This has a 20% chance to activate twice. Her 3-star uncap is a +100 to dance, and her 4-star appeal is a maximum dance 4.0 that scales based on how high your mental is, and applies a 35% dance buff for 3 turns. Her event passive is a memory gauge 10% up that requires you to be in the center position. This has a 10% chance to activate once. Amana earns very high marks from me, SS- to SS honestly, depending on the team you choose to use her on. If you ever needed another dance support for Alstrameria, Amana is right here to fulfill that for you. Her passives are geared toward being anti-revenge, so you'd have to do some particular health management to get the most out of an Amana to Kiriko passive rotation and be super busted. As such, you're probably safer, and honestly taking a much easier route, just building general dance teams or Alstro around this Amana and reaping the benefits. I very highly recommend pulling for this Amana if you are running Dance Alstrameria. She's probably now your new cornerstone support. If you just run dance teams, she's still very good, especially if you're hurting for SP generation. Next we have our event PSR, Madoka. I'm sort of impressed that Madoka managed to have 2 PSSRs, including a limited, alongside 3 support SSRs, again including a limited, before she got her first PSR. The result of the wait? A pretty mediocre card that really is just an excuse to put Madoka in a swimsuit. The commies are pretty interesting to see a newer side of Madoka as a character, but functionally this card is practically non-existent and has very little in the ways of potential. She's a low damage support type that focuses on applying evasion, though the better of these 2 values are for the much worse Nocchill team. She can't really outperform Madoka 2 on vocal Nocchill, and unless 30% evasion is a key piece to the future Dance Nocchill, you won't find much use for that either. You'll certainly farm all 5 copies to unlock the costume for other Madoka cards, and that's more or less the gist of this particular card. Her singular role is for evasion, and you might as well farm for her while she's here. Madoka's initial skill is a vocal 1.5 appeal that raises your evasion by 15% for 2 turns, and links into a vocal 2.0. The max version of this skill is a Dance 2.5 appeal that raises your evasion by 30% for 2 turns, and links into a Dance 2.0. Her 1-star passive is a vocal 12% up that requires your mental to be 75% or higher. This has a 40% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a Dance 24% up that requires the turn count to be 3 or earlier. This has a 40% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a +50 to dance. Her memory appeal once maxed out is a Dance 1.5 appeal that links into a vocal dance 30% buff until you are damaged. For the support recommendations, This is more or less a carbon copy of the Toru PSR build from the previous shiny review, just swapping in Toru supports as we see fit. Koito and Hinana still represent the core of Vocal Knock Chill, and other cards like Juri and Mei are powerful assets for strong appeals. The alternatives continue that same train of thought from before. Vocal supports if you want to take that route, or tri-stat supports like Chiyoko, Rinzai Kaho if you want to supplement the dance aspect. Amana, Natsuha, and Fuyuko carry the SP generation if you lack most of the other limited cards recommended above. For the team recommendations, it's Vocal Knock Chill, just with the new Madoka instead. At the very least, Madoka's 15% evasion buff that benefits from vocal stats will help stack up Toru's too. At the very least, Madoka's 15% evasion buff that benefits from vocal stats will help stack up Toru 2's passive. Off of her appeals, that is. Meaning she has more synergy here than the previous PSR Toru did with Madoka 2. As a center, Madoka earns a D. Just no. Doubt. Doubt. Big doubt. See, it's in the title card. Madoka's memory appeal is SR Toru's but backwards, which in turn makes it worse than Toru's. To hammer the idea home, you ideally want to be buffing your appeals and then attacking with said buff, not the other way around. If your memory appeal isn't intending to be decisive, then there might be something wrong with the build. It doesn't pack the numbers to be a huge threat, and it has very little payoff, honestly. As a unit, she gets a C. The biggest merit that this card brings outside of a free costume is that she has 30% evasion on her second appeal as a freebie card. Her passives are nothing special, and her damage is incredibly low. The story, as per usual, is good, but don't expect Madoka to be raking in all the wins as you climb your way through Grade Fest. Lastly, we have our first Grade Fest SSR, Fuyuko. What an honor. She actually has a pretty welcome purpose for players that prefer going through Wing. She comes with not one, but two separate audition masteries for Mental and SP, meaning you can compound or replace the Illuminate SRs or Flower Meguru if you needed a visual support. The passives are fine, and the appeal is actually pretty okay. Make sure to get at least 3 copies before this card eventually rotates out. This ensures the better mental mastery, and you get the passives as well. Obviously, getting her maxed out is super nice too, because as we can see, her Idol's Bond is actually a +10 at level 80, which is usually reserved to gacha cards, not free cards. So she even has that benefit going for her too. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promised Recovery, and Rest Boost, and she has 3 unique support skills. The first is Visual Mastery Visual, reaching +8 at level 75. Next, she has Audition Mastery SP, reaching +10 at level 80, and Audition Mastery Mental, reaching +5 at level 70. Her support appeal does scale, starting at a visual 3.0 out of the box, becoming a 3.1 at level 60, and capping off at a 3.5 at level 80. Her TFD idea is Appeal, her Insight token for Grad is Vocal, and her proficiency in Landing Point is Visual. Fuyuko's 1-star passive is a visual 18% up that requires you to be in the visual position. This has a 20% chance to activate once. She also gets a visual uncap of +50 at 1 stars. Her 2-star passive is a visual 35% up that requires the turn count to be 3 or later. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 3-star appeal is a visual 2.8 that applies a 30% visual buff for 3 turns. 3 stars also gives her a +50 visual uncap. She also has a passive at 4 stars, a visual 50% up that requires Fuyuko on your team. This has a 20% chance to activate once. And an event passive, which is visual 20% up that requires the turn count to be 2 or later, and has a 20% chance to activate twice. Fuyuko honestly earns anywhere from a B to an A+, I feel. She's very good. Fuyuko is not directly designed to be a killer Grade Fest support, but that's perfectly okay. The amount of support she gives to wing-produced runs is incredibly helpful, and combined with her range of passive options and non-event Idol's Bond value for any other mode, this Fuyuko is an absolute for any player interested in true ends and making the wing experience that much easier. She's a Grade A comfort support. I highly recommend farming for this Fuyuko, and I say farm, but make sure to just do your best in Grade Fest to get as many copies of this Fuyuko as you can. And that will do it for the video today. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. As of the time of this recording, it's actually the 28th in Japan, which is my birthday, so I'm going to enjoy the rest of the day, and tomorrow, of course, since, the States. But thank you so much for supporting the channel, as you have been for so long now. It's kind of crazy to think we've been doing this for almost 2 years now. Time is really moving. Anyway, next time we'll be talking about the next upcoming banner, which we actually know about now too. It's a new produced SSR for Fuyiko and support for Natsuha. Both are going to be limited, so let's look forward to them together. Till next time, I've been Cho. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day.